Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, Threads, and Facebook at Red Treehouse Pod. And now you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon. Join the Red Treehouse community for as little as $3 per month and receive exclusive member benefits, including personal shoutouts, early access to episodes, bonus episodes, and more. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. As always, if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Important note, sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. Let's start with a question. What comes to mind when you think of scary and spooky phenomena? Ghosts? Goblins? Things that go bump in the night? How about skinwalkers? In recent years, skinwalker sightings and encounters have increased, with people all over the world claiming to have run into one. A demonic shapeshifter originating with the Navajo tribe, skinwalkers have made their way into the mainstream. And it's not difficult to find eyewitness accounts claiming to have encountered and survived a run-in with these entities. We're going to explore the origins of skinwalkers in an upcoming episode. But in this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to hear a first-hand account of a group of paranormal investigators who spent a dark and scary evening at Skinwalker Railroad. And something interesting, they got it all on video. Who or what did the guys at WTCW Paranormal encounter at Skinwalker Railroad? I'll share the story. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. The following is a true story fully documented in video on the WTCW Paranormal YouTube channel. On June 20th, 2023, I was lying in my bed drifting in and out of consciousness when I was awakened by a phone call from my childhood friend and fellow paranormal investigator, William Bateman. He proceeded to tell me that he had been hearing murmurs of skinwalkers supposedly infesting an abandoned railroad in the Hampton Roads area. Being no stranger to paranormal investigating, and having run WTCW Paranormal for over a year and a half by that point, my interest was piqued with this information, and I began asking questions. In summary, just a couple weeks prior, William Bateman received a call from a group of local teenagers who claimed to have experienced a skinwalker encounter. They went on to explain that for the last couple of months, they had been frequenting an abandoned railroad derail station as a spot to drink, smoke, and fish in the nearby lake. However, the more frequently they visited the railroad, the stranger things had become. They started hearing strange noises from the surrounding forest, screaming, rustling of leaves, and generally strange things that could still be explained naturally. Soon, though, they began witnessing things that weren't so explainable. Figures hiding between the trees, footsteps approaching them when no one was there, remnants of what seemed to be rituals, and other generally odd sensations, like feeling watched. That was when they decided to call Will B., knowing that he was a member of WTCW Paranormal, to see if our team could investigate. This was everything I needed to hear, and only 11 days later, on July 1st, 2023, me and my team stood facing the forest leading to this railroad. There were 3 of us on the team: me, Will B., and a mutual friend of ours named Jack. We arrived at the location around 7:30 p.m., knowing the path to the railroad was a bit of a hike, and the remoteness of the area only made it more intimidating. Beginning our trek into the forest, I immediately noticed that the forest was clearly not commonly explored. There was no clear path, and high thorns and branches protruded into our every step. Still, we pressed on. After about 10 minutes of walking the trail, we stumbled across our first landmark, a stream of water dug about 3 feet into the ground, seemingly splitting the forest into 2 sections. Having no other way to cross it, the 3 of us attempted to jump it with varying degrees of success. Will B. and Jack passed perfectly, whereas I, holding all the paranormal equipment, failed to cross cleanly, having landed 1 foot into the mud and getting it all over my pants. The team and I continued onward through the crowded forest, and although none of us vocalized it, there was a very clear sense of anxiety in the air, as if something terrifying was awaiting us. We eventually stumbled upon a giant mound of wood chips. Though it was an abnormal sight, it meant we were on the right path, as the group of teens who called us explained there was an abandoned lumber mill preceding the railroad. We were almost there. Clumsily climbing the mound, Will B., Jack, and I looked down upon our first clearing since entering the forest 20 minutes before. That's when we saw it. An eerie, abandoned lumber mill. Giant logs were bundled together between large rusted excavators and work trucks, swallowed by the surrounding forest vines. It was a sight beyond explaining. What was once a bustling work zone now laid completely still, like a time capsule. Despite our excitement, this wasn't our area of focus. We still had a bit of a ways to the derail station, and the sun was quickly setting on us. so we continued towards our main objective. A couple 100 feet past the abandoned lumber mill, we found ourselves on the railroad stretching miles in either direction, with tall grass to the left of the railroad and the deep forest to the right. We started down the path to the derail station. The three of us were relieved to be out of the woods, though this relief was short-lived, as almost immediately we noticed something strange. After only about 5 minutes of walking, Will B. turned to me and said, "William, look at the electromagnetic field reader." He held his hand out to me anxiously. In it sat the EMF reader, sitting at a charge of 3 out of 5. For some context, in a home packed full of electrical wiring and tech, a standard EMF reader will sit at a 1 out of 5. But for some inexplicable reason, in the middle of nowhere, without a piece of technology in sight, the EMF reader was detecting a charge 3 times greater than average. Something gave off a very strong energy that the detector was picking up on. But who or what was it? I told Will B. I have no idea why it's saying that. Maybe it's just a misread. But little did I know, for the rest of our 5-hour investigation at this railroad, the reading would never go below a 3, and it was anything but a misread. The only person I was trying to convince of this was myself. It was only minutes after our first warning sign when we would encounter our second. As we continued down the path, we began noticing animal remains here and there. We simply brushed it off, considering we were in the wild. But as we walked, the remains grew more common and stranger, starting with pieces of animal hide in the forest next to the trail every now and again, to turtle and squirrel corpses decomposing only feet away from the tracks. And finally, we found skulls and full-on skeletons sitting practically all over the railroad itself. While it isn't uncommon to stumble upon animal remains in the forest every now and then, fully cleaned and preserved animal skulls sitting directly on top of railroad tracks almost every 20 feet is an entirely different story. I'm guessing these were the ritual remnants that the teenagers who contacted us were referring to. Will B., Jack, and I all reacted practically the exact same way: disgust and fear. If the teenagers who called us were telling the truth about the animal remains, were they also telling the truth about seeing strange creatures out there in the woods as well? I suppose the whole reason we showed up was to test that theory, so we stayed down that path. As the three of us grew closer to our destination, our curiosity grew in turn. And after almost an hour of painstaking walking, the derail station was finally in view. It was a beautiful sight, the summer sun setting and casting a beautiful dark blue shadow on the ground below. Down the path sat a tall and rusty metal structure, with a short pier sitting above the lake. To the left of it were a bank of rocks sitting on the edge of the lake. The cicadas' calls grew louder from the forest to the right, and the owls began cooing as the sun finally set on the bog to our left. And all that was left was the abandoned derail station up ahead. Just so you know, unlike TV shows, paranormal investigating and ghost hunting consists of a lot of sitting around and waiting for something to happen, which admittedly can be pretty boring. Thankfully, Will B. and Jack had the brilliant idea of fishing in the lake for fun while waiting for activity to occur, just so that we could kill some time. After about 30 minutes of sitting around and catching an eel or two, the sun set entirely, leaving us in an inky, black void. Suddenly, Jack frantically tapped on mine and Will B's shoulder and whispered, "What the hell is that?" while pointing behind us. We turned back just to see nothing. Jack whispered again, "I swear to God, I just saw what looked like 2 red eyes back there in the tall grass." To which Will B promptly responded, "It was probably just a fox, or something else. Don't sweat it, you're freaking us out." Only seconds later, Jack said loudly, "Look, there it is again." We were prepared this time, and Will B and I whipped our heads around to catch a glimpse of what he was pointing at. Then, we saw what he saw. 2 eyes, hard to see but not reflective like any animal. Just truly glowing red, unlike anything I've ever seen. I know it sounds like such bullshit for me to say, but honest to God, we all saw it. And honestly, I wouldn't expect anyone to believe me had I not caught it on camera. We only saw it for a second, and then it was gone. Me and Will B had cameras trained on where the light had come from last. Thankfully for us, we were able to catch another glimpse of it on our cameras before it disappeared entirely. As crazy as it sounds, we had no choice but to go towards whatever the hell that thing was. Ahead of us was a lake, and behind us was our only way back home. And after seeing those eyes, not one of us wanted to spend another minute there, even if it meant going towards it. So we started back on the path, another hour-long trek to get back to our car. As if that weren't bad enough, the worst part was hiking in the pitch black darkness of night. It took just a couple minutes of walking for paranormal activity to start up again. The 3 of us kept walkie-talkies on us in case of an emergency. And on those walkies was an emergency call button that rang out an alarm on all the other walkie-talkies. Suddenly, and without warning, our emergency call buttons rang out loudly, giving me the worst jump scare of my life. The 3 of us immediately started asking amongst ourselves, "Will, did you do that?" "No." "Come on, Jack, you're not funny. Don't play like that." Wasn't me either. Eventually we realized none of us called the others. So how the hell did it ring out like that? Who, or what, called out to us, and why? Positively terrified at this point, the 3 of us started power walking the trail because it was only getting darker, and whatever was out there was only getting more agitated. That was when I stopped and realized the whole forest was dead silent, compared to only minutes before, when the birds, bugs, and other animals were chirping. Then it was practically deafening. But now, there was absolutely nothing. I looked at Will B and I told him, "Dude, the whole forest is dead silent." To which he responded, "Yeah." I said, "You don't think that's at least a little weird?" He just looked away for a moment, as if pondering the question. As he stood there listening, from within my backpack full of equipment, I heard the soft purring of the radio in my spirit box. William snapped to look back at me, because once again, a piece of equipment just turns itself on. At this point, William just called out openly, "Yo, who the hell is out there?" To which the spirit box chattered and spit out a choppy, "Hello." This thing that was manipulating our EMF reader, that showed its eyes to us, that scared those teenagers, that called us on our radios, was now openly communicating with us. Within the spirit realm, if an evil spirit like a skinwalker tries to reach out to you in such an obvious way, you are in grave danger. By that point, we had enough evidence to conclude our investigation. The teenagers were right. I don't know what was living in that forest, but it was more real than anything I could put into words. Safe to say, we ran all the way back to our car after that. We ran and ran until we had cuts all over our arms and ankles, until we had mulch all over our legs from stumbling up the mulch hill in the lumber lot, until we could barely breathe. And then we ran some more. The relief Jack, Will B, and I felt when we were finally sitting in that car was indescribable. Pure adrenaline was pumping through our veins, because we just escaped what is considered to be one of the most dangerous occult entities there is. Unfortunately, although the three of us were able to escape the Skinwalker Railroad, not everyone has been so lucky. Exactly a month and 20 days after our investigation at the railroad, on August 20th, 2023, I received a phone call from William Bateman. He told me he found an article, published that day, talking about a tragedy that had taken place at the railroad we just investigated. Another group of teens had visited the railroad to swim. One of them had jumped off the pier connected to the derail station into the water and did not come up. At 7 p.m. the next day, the police found the body of a 15-year-old boy washed up on the rocks by the railroad. Those same rocks, Will B, Jack, and I had been fishing on before witnessing whatever that entity was only a month prior. I'm not remotely implying or suggesting this young man's death was anything supernatural, but it was still a very disturbing coincidence for me and Will B to discover. I've never experienced anything like what I experienced at that railroad, and to be frank, I think I might just need to revisit it for the sake of science. A special thank you to the guys at WTCW Paranormal for sharing this first-hand perspective of the scary phenomena at the Skinwalker Railroad. I don't know if you caught it earlier, but they captured their investigation on video. Simply go to YouTube and search for WTCW Paranormal to find the video. I'll admit, traipsing through the woods is one of my least favorite activities in the world. Having grown up in New York, there just weren't a ton of opportunities to do this. Even now, living in an area close to the Appalachian Trail, scenic overlooks, state and national parks, and plenty of dense forest, it takes a lot for me to pick up and go. And you can forget about hiking miles into the woods in the pitch black of night. The possibility of running into something otherworldly is more than enough for me to stay in the safe confines of my immediate area. I'm thankful for courageous folks like WTCW Paranormal who risk life and limb to capture the scary and strange. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, I'll admit something else. I'm a firm believer in the supernatural and paranormal. But of all the paranormal phenomena in the world, skinwalkers really make my hair stand on end. In the next episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the infamous Skinwalker Ranch. For now, we're left with these lingering questions. Who or what did the guys at WTCW Paranormal encounter at Skinwalker Railroad? I've shared the story. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.